There's no denying the challenges of a carbon-based economy. There's no denying the challenges of transitioning to a less carbon-intensive economy. But rather than wringing one's proverbial hands and warning of imminent doom and planetary collapse, your work and now your current work seems to be motivated primarily by a passion for there's a lot that is getting done that ameliorates. There's a lot about technology and science that doesn't have to be techno-utopian, but can actually be pragmatic solutions, and that we best get on doing that. So I guess my question is, how has your perspective on that shifted from being largely in the private sector, albeit with strong views about policy, to now being in the public sector, albeit in an unusual position in the public sector, in that you kind of are, you're not the kid in the candy shop. You are, in fact, the candy shop.
Man, it's pretty awesome to be in the candy shop. Well, first, thanks for having me on. Look, I think that, I'm driven by sort of Anna in Frozen 2, right? Where she's like, you just have to do the next right thing. I think in general, there's a lot of people who think that technology will set you free. And in fact, it's really execution that sets you free. When you look at, all the things that we use, they're not necessarily the technology that had the highest score in some competition out of engineering school. It's the one that, folks were able to mass manufacture at scale. They were the ones that you were able to get out the door. And a lot of that is driven by entrepreneurs and growth companies, right? And so whether it's, Elon Musk and Tesla that we gave a loan to back in 2009, or whether it's, the folks who did the first 500 megawatt solar farms. And so I think part of my coming into the Department of Energy has been a recognition that it's not really just about the person that has the best technology score, but it's also the person who basically is willing to break through walls to get their technology to the masses. And I think that perspective is something that I can uniquely bring, I think, into the government. And, frankly, I think it's working. There's a lot of people within the government who are like, yeah, we want America to dominate these sectors. We want our companies to have that kind of success, right? And we want to replicate the success we've had in solar, wind, lithium ion battery storage, and EVs to these other 12 or 14 sectors. And I think, my background has been a unique bridge building exercise between the growth companies, who are generally sort of libertarian in nature, to the government, who has these resources that can help them.
So, Jigger, being the man with the execution plan right now, it's really fun talking to you, because I feel like it's a great chance to ask about the inside look about how this execution from the government side of things actually happens. So, could you, give us a day in the life, so to speak, of what the loan program office is doing? What's the budget? How do you decide what's a yes or no? Just also a general picture of what's happening, because I'm not sure if everyone listening to the podcast is going to know.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that I think folks just use infrastructure every day, but don't quite know how it gets built.
Right.
I think the first thing we had to do at the loan programs office when we came in, because remember, the secretary called us dormant, I think, in her confirmation hearing. So we were largely dormant when we came in, was really just do reach out. So I think the first 3 months, I think we just called every growth company that I could think of that could qualify for loan programs office and said, hey, I know that you have never heard of us and probably never thought to use us, but you qualify. So I felt like the publisher clearinghouse guy. And that was great, right? But you can imagine that once we get them to qualify, and we've got about, I don't know, we got several dozen people in our outreach and business development team that help coach and mentor a lot of these companies, because you can imagine interacting with a government program is scary for a lot of these companies. Then they have to actually do the work. They have to put in several hundred hours worth of work and put together an application that might be hundreds of pages, right? Because remember, the average loan that we are evaluating is about $1 billion. That's the loan. And so the projects could be $2 billion. And so, with a $2 billion project, you would expect a lot of detail and due diligence to come in. And for a lot of these companies, they have been able to raise money just by selling a dream, right? They've been able to go to a venture capitalist and say, here's my 40 slide deck and look how awesome I am and look how the good press I've gotten. And they've been able to get a check. A lot of these venture capitalists don't do diligence on these companies before writing them a check. So they're like, what? I have to go through a 9 to 12 month due diligence process. I have to answer like hundreds of questions from your people. That seems excessive. Why don't you just write me a check? And I was like, no, that's not how it works. I mean, like, even if I wasn't the government and I was at JP Morgan, I would still ask you lots of questions before giving you, $1 billion loan, right? And so we leverage the 10,000 engineers, scientists, and experts on our platform. So when a loan application comes in, we're like, oh, that's really interesting. We have a group in Sandia National Laboratories or Argonne or Lawrence Berkeley that has been doing this for 20 years. What did they think about this technology and their approach? And most of the time that person will say, actually, I was the original patent holder of that technology. And here's the 18 times we tested it. And here's why I think this will work. And so we have these teams of people within LPO. So you have outreach and business development. You've got origination, which is the underwriting team, right? The group that you would think about as actually processing the loan. You have a technical team who has to opine on whether they think this approach will even work. And then a few other teams like legal and risk and portfolio management. And so that's sort of a day in the life. And right now we've got 177 active applications that we're processing through the program, and about 30 of them have been put into full due diligence. And so we're underwriting those 30.
So Jigar, will you give us an example of a couple of recent projects?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the deals that we recently provided a conditional commitment to is a company called EOS, which is, a company that has been through hell and back getting their technology up to speed. These are, zinc-based batteries, and they're what you call long-duration energy storage. So you can imagine most people are using lithium-ion batteries, but these guys are using a zinc-based chemistry, which has no critical minerals. So all of their materials are easy to get, pretty cost effective. But you can imagine they don't have a gigafactory yet. So their stuff is probably 4 times more expensive than you need to be, right? So you need to do full automation. You've got to, really grow the company up and get to higher volumes. And so we provided a conditional commitment to them. They're out of Pittsburgh. And, I think they're, the quintessential company that needs to use us, right? Where there are a lot of folks who are worried, does the technology work? Does it really have a pathway to reducing cost? Is there really a place for them, right? A lot of solar and wind companies are only using 2 hours of battery storage. Are people going to need 6 to 10 hours of battery storage? And we did all the fundamental work, right? We hired market advisors. We looked at the technology, looked at the cost curve, look at what they're suggesting in automation and how much cost reduction was possible. And so when we gave them a conditional commitment, their life changed because people said, look, the Department of Energy actually evaluated all their claims and actually believe that it's possible to actually succeed in what they're trying to do. And that really quieted a lot of the critics and, allowed them to now focus on execution, which has been extraordinary for them, right? And we'll see whether they succeed or fail, right? Several of our projects are going to fail based on their ability to execute. But, I think DOE was able to come in and actually settle a lot of these disputes, right? And make sure that they had a fighting chance to succeed.